Well, Jensen, the UK has a new national religion. It decided to conquer all of our institutions via intimidation. But don't worry, our very liberal and tolerant government will put you on a watch list, define you as an extremist, and eventually criminalize literally any criticism you have of your policy, their policy, if you take notice. So I love living in the UK at the moment. If you don't know what I'm referring to, it is, of course, the religion of peace. Peace of you here, peace of you there. Islam. So I wanted to start off with Jeremy Hunt's budget last week, because as has already been noted, he decided to announce £1 million for a Muslim-only war memorial as petitioned by Sajid Javid. Now, I'm sort of scratching my head here because I remember Sajid Javid distinctly saying, "So what?" in response to Nigel Farage noting ethnic change from the census. But suddenly, now that this ethnic change has come back to bite them in the backside, we need to appease jihadians with a war memorial? Because they also beat the racism, I guess.
A warning for Conservatives, they will not vote for you for this, but I do have to intone the ancient mantra, 0 seats, 0 seats, 0 seats. Come on, boys, we can do it. A new record, minus seats.
Yeah.
We'll be throwing seats out of Parliament by the time this is done.
Hi folks, sorry to interrupt the video, but I wanted to let you know that we've introduced a feature on the website that allows you to purchase individual videos. So if you go over to lotus.com and see a piece of premium content that you really want to watch, you can pay for it, and it is yours forever.
We can celebrate that, but I will be invoking your law later, Harry. And that is that Harry's law, whenever the government put up an infrastructure, a sort of surveillance infrastructure, to surveil terrorists, it always gets disproportionately used on the domestic population who object to government policy. And that's exactly what's going to happen, because not only are the Conservatives actively doing that, but it's going to be accelerated under the Labour Party, as we'll see with their later definition of Islamophobia, which we've mentioned on the show before. But for those of our new viewers, since the last time we've covered it, it's really going to raise some eyebrows. I don't think they'll climb over this memorial, hopefully, because as we remember the last time, the Palestinian protesters decided to scale the Royal Artillery Memorial. So maybe they're just hoping there'll be one memorial they won't desecrate. But all right, so brilliant. Then we get to Ramadan. Downing Street and the Home Office say Ramadan Mubarak. The holy month of Ramadan. Holy according to who?
Mashallah, mashallah.
Well, quite, yeah.
They've just finally won Callum back.
Rishi Sunak, the Hindu, where currently his home country is banning Muslims. We have an established church. Holy according to who? It's like, so this has happened before. You know when newsreaders on so-called secular and neutral outlets go, the Prophet Muhammad?
Yeah.
Who's Prophet?
Yeah. You would never say the Prophet Jesus. You just say Jesus.
Yeah, but you're not saying the Son of God.
Yeah.
Or you're not going to put on a Hebrew inflection to say Abraham or whatever.
In the year of our Lord 2021, the COVID pandemic ended or something. Like you wouldn't phrase it in religious language.
I mean, they should, but still. Okay. Anyway, point made. There is clearly not a secular or Christian ethos to our institutions when they are unilaterally celebrating Muslim holidays at the expense of, well, they didn't mention Lent in here, even though similar principle, and it's actually something practiced by the established church in the country. But okay, it's just the government, right? Surely not the Church of England. Oh, right then. Brilliant. I'll let this play in the background, because Justin Welby just sits there and says, the Muslims in our nation make a fantastic contribution. Even Twitter doesn't like him. With their diversity. The Muslims' diversity is in of itself a fantastic contribution to England.
Yeah, not our diversity.
No, their
Greetings to the
diversity.
Muslims.
So, can we...
Sorry, that's how he actually just started that speech.
Yeah,
Our ancient and oldest friends.
Assalamu alaikum.
At this point, you would make a better archbishop, Callum.
What, even as dressed
You'd
as
be-
a Muslim? Just
You'd be better.
Be more
outreach.
honest.
You'd be better outreach for these communities, wouldn't you?
So him and another archbishop, whose name slips my mind, I think it might be the Bishop of York, put forward a letter today as well before we
complaining to
did this. Basically, they said that this new definition of extremism would unjustly penalise British Muslims. Who...
Right.
But
why would that be?
Yeah, it's almost like there might be an extremist cohort among the Muslims, but you're not allowed to notice that. Not allowed to.
I like to think the Church of England is taking the George Galloway approach and is sending these out to all of the Muslims in the country, and there's another separate message for all of the English people as well.
Well, when he says...
I mean, that is just the future of our country, isn't it, really?
Oh, sectarian politics, absolutely, yeah. When he says their diversity, he just means their non-whiteness. Because it can't mean anything else. Because unless he means diversity within the Muslim community, in which case, exactly, he'd be admitting there's a cohort of extremists which we're also celebrating alongside the peace-abiding, law-abiding British Muslims who I'm absolutely sure make up the overwhelming majority, even though I keep seeing hundreds of thousands of people in the street every week calling for intifada. Anyway, we'll let him get away with that one. Rishi Sunak decided to also visit a mosque. That's fantastic. I'm just going to play a little bit of this clip because...
Looking as uncomfortable as ever.
He literally did the meme. He actually tweeted out, Ramadan Kareem.
Yep.
Yeah. Just, okay.
Yep.
Assalamu alaikum, guys.
Well, the framing of this is... Bear in mind, this is after October the 7th in Israel, which we should have nothing to do with, but we do have loads to do with it because we've got 4 million British Muslims here. British by only citizenship, not by national identity or fealty, who every Wednesday and weekend have been agitating on behalf of foreign terrorist governments. And now this is our problem. And the response by the Conservative government has been to act as if the Muslims themselves are being attacked. Not that a bunch of innocent civilians got blown up in Israel, again, halfway around the world. Not that an MP was stabbed by an Islamist. Not that an MP's office was firebombed by an Islamist. Not that they're constantly under threat from Islamists chanting outside the gates. But somehow the Muslims are the victim in all this. And what Rishi Sunak pledges is bloody mind-boggling.
Ramadan Mubarak to Muslims here and around the world, as you embark on this month of fasting, giving, and contemplation. To the British Muslim community, I want to say thank you for your incredible contribution across every part of our society. From the NHS to the armed forces, to business and industry, academia, law and the arts.
They fail on all
Last
of those.
October, I met Imam Atta, director of the charity Tell Mama, who told me about their important work recording anti-Muslim hatred and supporting victims. And their latest figures are shocking. In the months following Hamas's horrific attacks, incidents of anti-Muslim hatred tripled.
The real
People,
victims.
often women, have been threatened, abused and assaulted. That's unacceptable.
By who?
I will always stand with you against anti-Muslim hatred. So today we're announcing that we're increasing our funding for security in mosques and faith schools to £29 million. And that's not just this year. We're providing £29 million every year for the next 4 years to help protect the Muslim community.
I thought he was Hindu.
Yeah, apparently so.
Can you feel the electricity in the air, gents? The electricity of 0 seats rising by the minute. It's electrifying the air.
Not only have they deracinated all the institutions, as you mentioned, I do think it was probably a bad idea to bring up the contributions of Muslims to the British Army, because if we keep saying more joined ISIS than the British Army, so that's not really a good look. And I saw you cringe when he mentioned Tell Mama. Yeah, we've covered on this show Tell Mama before and their dishonesty. I will be bringing it up, but I'm bringing it up because they're back. They're back involved with government.
I thought he was evil. Is he actually a stupid person?
Who, Rishi Sunak?
Yeah.
You know, he is. No. So I had a conversation with an MP last night. I had a conversation with an MP last night who is on the backbenches and is against the cabinet. And he said he is expecting absolute extinction at the next election. And he doesn't think that any of the MPs will defect to reform before the election, but any of the safe-seaters will defect afterwards. He said that I'm right about Gove. He said that Kemi is not trusted by any of the MPs and she's absolutely puppeteered by Gove. And he said that Rishi Sunak is a blithering idiot who, quote, doesn't get politics.
I mean, it's a good case.
Well, yeah, I think that lines up with everything that we see. I like to think, so in marketing, they tell you to have your ideal target audience visualized as a man and a woman. I like to think for Rishi Sunak's cabinet, they've got a picture of you, Callum. This is the man that we're going for, except they think when you say things like your mashallah and all of that, they think you're serious. So they go, this man...
The white Muslim race, we must get them.
This man is our ideal voter, and there's a picture of you with all the Taliban, like with the number one, yeah.
They're trying to secure the ginger vote. That's about it.
Yeah.
Oh,
So, more details on the funding, just thought I'd mentioned. Right, so the government commits more funding to protect UK Muslims. What a headline from a government website. Thank you for just admitting they're now your imported clientele class. So the funding announced on the 11th of March will protect mosques, Muslim faith schools and other community centres. Bear in mind, the Batley Grammar School teacher who showed a picture of the Prophet Muhammad in a religious education classroom and was then hounded by Islamists outside the school is still in hiding. So no protection money for him, but all right. So the government's made 29.4 million available, including an uplift of 4.9 million following the events in Israel on October the 7th. That's weird. Hamas commits a terror attack. Muslims in Britain most affected.
Yeah.
How strange. It's It's almost like there's some sort of ideological connection there.
There's a Norm Macdonald joke in here, isn't there?
The backlash would be terrible,
Yes.
Harry. Absolutely terrible. So he's providing more than 70 million in the next 4 years to protect Jewish community sites as part of the Jewish Community Protective Security Grant, and some 31 million will also be made available to protect democratic processes and institutions in response to growing extremist threats. Completely nebulous. No idea what that means. I assume that's just more money for the intelligence services to point out the far right. This is after, in 2023, 28 million worth of funding will help keep places of worship safe. So there's loads of funding just being spent on various foreign and religious interest groups that are not Anglos and are not Church of England, or at least Catholicism, which is in line and has a historical continuity in the country.
Sorry, isn't Tom Tugendhat Jewish, or at
He is,
least
yeah.
partially like Viennese Jewish or something?
Yeah, he's got Jewish ancestry, yes.
Why is he the one putting all this
Yeah, it's almost like it's completely suicidal policy.
completely absurd?
Mention. Again,
Jews for Hamas. All right.
I mean, literally, I just
turkeys for Christmas.
because I thought he was, so I quickly went on his Wikipedia and it said that he was also complaining in one of the last elections about the anti-Semitism he faced. From who? Don't worry, guys. 29 million coming your way.
I'm
soon
sure
enough.
it's just the far right. Again, no mention of Anglophobia, no mention of anti-Christianity. We currently criminalize Christianity in this country with street preachers in Swindon citing Bible verses and women standing on street corners silently praying in their head for aborted children going to prison. I'm just really glad that all this money is spent on synagogues and mosques, which are being attacked by, I'm assuming, the far right in both cases, which don't seem to be anywhere because of a conflict thousands of miles away. Great. Maybe what'll appease the Islamists, who also don't exist but also are a problem, is a human sacrifice. How about that? Well, as we see with Lee Anderson, he got chucked out the Tory party for noting that Sadiq Khan's lax policing policies is given over London to his, quote, Islamist mates. See the prior segment on Sadiq Khan's Islamist mates for Sadiq Khan's career history of affiliating with and defending Islamists. So, well done to Lee for defecting, but the fact that it's gotten to that point where a deputy party chairman now has to go to a different party on the precipice of the next election just to speak his mind because the current Conservative Party keeps bending the knee to Islamists is mental. And it just shows you we've got a complete replacement state religion at work. Now, I expect to see more leaving the Tories, not just members, because they've just got 1,000 members over at Reform in the last couple of days, but eventually MPs probably after the next election, for this, a new definition of extremism. We are, in fact, extremists, gentlemen. Because the definition of extremism, according to Michael Gove, as I mentioned earlier,
My favourite.
he always wields the blade in what Morgoth calls the Tory backstab.
A coke dealer.
I don't think we can say that.
Allegedly.
There we go. To update the government's definition of extremism, first set out more than a decade ago, Gove has defined extremism as vocal or active opposition to fundamental British values. And it's seen as no longer fit for purpose. Which values?
Do you remember when Michael Gove, I think it was his wife, released a photograph of his bookshelf in his home office, and it had
David Irving on it.
Well, yes, and it also had The Strange Death of Europe
And the bell curve.
and the bell curve on it, and people started freaking out about it. So you're looking at it going, Michael, unless you have these as some kind of weird like shelf candy and you've not cracked them open, you know that something is going on here, but you're doing the exact opposite of what you should be doing in every instance.
He gave a cover endorsement to Mary's book. It's genuinely head-scratching. So I can only assume...
Is Michael Gove an accelerationist? What's going on?
I have no idea.
What's that?
I think he just likes to
I'm
play
going to
arch
burn the
gatekeeper
system from the inside.
with his Joker paint on. I mean, it
0 seats.
quite. Well, no, Gove,
Yeah.
but Gove's going
We
to
all
keep it.
thought that OG Roland Rat was AA this whole time. It was actually Michael Gove. I should have known.
Well, actually, that's quite interesting. Do you remember Gove lost the 2017 leadership contest and then stopped Boris from getting it? Do you think that he just wants to be leader in opposition? Because he's definitely going to keep a seat.
Why are we all going to prison?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, good point.
Part of this reason, Gove said Sunak was absolutely right about the need for new powers to tackle extremism. His words are sadly all too necessary. We need to fight and unite to fight extremism everywhere it exists. So he's announcing details of a government unit for combating extremism that will be responsible for providing leadership and training for officials across government departments. The unit is also expected to assess whether individuals or groups have breached the new definition and will collect data and research to inform counter-extremism policies. The Prime Minister said the government would redouble support for the PREVENT programme, which is designed to tackle radicalisation. Now, reminder, The Prevent program designated Douglas Murray, J.R.R. Tolkien, and George Orwell as pipelines to the far right.
Yeah, I think that's if you had possession of any of those pieces of texts. Like, if you just had them at your home and a police officer came in, ooh, let's be careful.
Lord of the Rings? Yeah, I bet you're going to bomb a mosque, ain't ya?
Yeah. Like Michael Gove currently selling his entire bookshelf.
Oh, Tolkien from Beyond the Grave. No, they finally figured me out. No.
So, as we've reported in various
That's what
articles,
it was about all along, boy.
So this is essentially going to handle more powers to Home Office's Raiku and all of the other institutions that gaslight us anytime that there's a terrorist attack to say, don't look back in anger, the government certainly didn't cause this, and you're an extremist for noticing that this is a completely avoidable problem that we have imported into your country. So the nebulous definition is, if you're against democracy, liberal British values. I'm not a big fan of democracy at the moment, and neither is Rishi Sunak because he wasn't bloody elected. But that doesn't matter. Absolutely doesn't matter. So a bunch of former Home Secretaries have decided to write a letter about this. And this is Priti Patel, Sajid Javid, and Amber Rudd. Womp womp. And there are about among a dozen signatories to say that it shouldn't be politicized. I think they should read up on their Schmidt. Because if you say that it isn't political, all that is cover for your enemies who actually make it political and just wield it against the native population. So in the statement, they said, in the run-up to a general election, it's particularly important that consensus is maintained and that no political party uses the issue to seek short-term tactical advantage. Sure, that will convince the next Labour government. None of this should ever be political. It has to strike the right balance between free speech and how to bring communities together. Now, let's scroll down to see who the signatories of this are. Harry, you might recognise a name here. Look at the bottom. For our audio listeners, it's Sundar Katwala, the director of British Future, former secretary of the Fabian Society, whose logo, as Carl pointed out last Friday, was a wolf in sheep's clothing. So excuse me if I don't think that he is going to abide by the non-political definition. The others who signed the statement include Brendan Cox, the widower of MP Joe Cox and founder of Survivors Against Terror. Now, Carl mentioned, I think this was on Monday with you, that Brendan Cox's NGO aims to convince campaigners, politicians, and institutions of the benefit of big tent approaches and dissuade them from pursuing culture wars which serve no one. So this just exists to say, please look the other way because we've caused this problem.
Well, the fact of the matter is, as you mentioned with the Schmidt there and saying that pursuing culture wars which serve no one by trying to depoliticize an issue when you're operating from within the sphere of Westminster politics, politicians whose actions are by their very nature political, saying that something that they are doing shouldn't be political, is one, inherently and definitionally contradictory, and two, is an attempt to take this new normal and really cement it as the new normal. Well, this is just how things are now, so let's not make it political. Means stop pushing back against us. That's all that means.
It's to permanently set the parameters of the Overton window to that which is advantageous to the liberal establishment consensus, even if it isn't working. Even if it's actively killing people. Now, Michael Gove has some sage wisdom for anyone who doesn't want to be caught out on the Palestinian marches as an extremist. Just don't march alongside extremists. Wish I would have thought of that. That'll definitely convince him, Michael. He said, it's only extremism if you translate that into a political ideology that is anti-democratic, private belief should be cherished, free speech has to be protected, but there are people who are operating deliberately to undermine our democracy, like Rishi Sunak. This space and the exploitation of that space by extremists has only grown, and he's called for the Equality Act to be revisited following claims that a tribunal, I think it was around Bristol University, had established anti-Zionist beliefs are legally protected. He also waded into the row over Islamophobia, said that it risked a chilling effect on free speech and preferred anti-Muslim hatred instead. Now, I wish I could believe Michael Gove on that, but as always, they say one thing and then immediately do another. So I like to take people not from what they say, but from what their repeated pattern of action is. And so Michael Gove has appointed the head of Tell Mama as his anti-Muslim extremist czar. Yeah. So this is Fayaz Mughal, who founded Faith Matters and Tell Mama. And Mughal is understood to have met with Gove, who as community secretary works with the Home Office to tackle extremism through the government's Prevent program. So Tell Mama are again setting the tone of the Prevent program. Rishi Sunak obviously cited the statistics from Tell Mama earlier as the reason why this entire anti-Muslim extremism unit is needed. You look very dispirited, Callum.
Man, in the UK we've got this big problem with Islamists. We should put in charge of dealing with extremism? A bunch of Islamist sympathizers? That'd be a great idea.
What evidence have you got for that? Is it possibly that they just might have made up statistics from years ago?
They're liars. They literally just lie to advance their agenda.
Yeah, so this is an article that was run in The Independent after Boris Johnson joked about Muslim women wearing the niqab or the burqa as a letterbox or a bank robber. In an article that was defending their right to wear it, by the way, which I don't agree with either. I don't think they should. They said, tell Mama, that Islamophobic incidents rose 375% after his column in the Telegraph. Because your average National Action yobbo is a dedicated Telegraph reader. They're both completely stupid troglodytes and
the middle class.
Yeah, quite. Yeah. Now, where does this figure come from? And I actually linked this in the article. I think you've mentioned this before. There was a report, and this is on page 9. And they said the second and more significant spike of anti-Muslim attacks occurred in August after former Foreign Secretary, former Prime Minister now, Boris Johnson wrote the column referring to the Muslim women as letterboxes and bank robbers. In the week following his article, anti-Muslim attacks increased 375%, from 8 incidents in the previous week to 38 in the following. 22 were directed at visibly Muslim women who wore the face veil or other veiling practices. We recorded a total of 57 incidents in the 3 weeks following the column's publication. 32 were directed at visibly Muslim women.
What were those incidents?
Did you follow up on them? Did you require any evidence? Was it just Jussie Smollett in the niqab phoning you from Chicago?
And were these reported to the police? Or if I remember correctly from when I looked into it, it was people ringing up Tell Mama saying, oh, someone did something mean to me because I'm a Muslim.
It's a self-report hotline. And it's almost like these people have a perverse incentive to inflate the statistics and collect data without actually vetting whether or not these attacks happened. So they can say, oh my God, there's such a problem with anti-Muslim bigotry or Islamophobia. Quick, we should get loads of government money because this is the new state religion now.
I want to push back against the framing. I'm sure everybody here on this panel agrees and knows anyway of the idea that somebody disagreeing with your religion and somebody voicing those complaints about your religion is not any form of hate crime in the first place. If there was a level of violence, physical, that actually went along with this, then yes, it should have been reported to the police. That doesn't really mark it out as any different from any other violent crime as far as I'm concerned. But if somebody just voices that I don't like that you're a particular religion, well, guess what? Like Christians in the West have been dealing with that since the 1960s and 1970s, when lots of Hollywood and television productions started to hammer home that, by the way, we really hate Christians. So I disagree with the framing of any sort of like speech hate crimes in the first place.
But the reason they're doing this is because the Christians don't have the death penalty for apostasy, so we actually open ourselves up to mockery. And we value honesty, whereas the Islamists don't, with a lovely little concept called Kia. And point being, as a Christian, I can't stand Islam. I think it's fundamentally wrong. I think it leads to barbarous civilizations. I don't want it imported here. And I can distinguish between people who keep Islam in their private conception of the good and put their British identity first, but I don't think that's the majority, given hundreds of thousands of people every single week come out and chant for violence on behalf of the international Ummah. That seems to be where their allegiances lie, and excuse me if I don't think that these people are lying to advance Islamist ends too. Now, I helped draw attention to this a little while ago, and the tweet did okay, it got shared by a few thousand people. 72,000, there we go. And then the next day, after this guy was hired, before he was even announced, he quit because of threats from the far right. Hello. Oops. Excuse me if I don't think after the Tell Mama reports that you probably received loads of death threats. I'm going to choose to read this as criticism because, again, any criticism of Islam or its espousers seems to be conflated with Islamophobia. Also, phobia denotes irrational hatred. After so many kids get bombed at pop concerts, I don't think it's unfair to be afraid of Islamism, but there you go. I just suppose it's me. I'm far right. So I wanted to finish this off with, it's not going to get politicized, guys. Don't worry. I mean, we might just be currently on a watch list from the Tory government who said they were going to be conservatives and not conservatives, 0 seats. But don't worry, it won't be politicized under the next Labour government. It's not like they're adopting this, the all-party parliamentary definition of an Islamophobia. Now, as we've covered before, for any new viewers, this is defined as Islamophobia is rooted in racism and is a type of racism that targets expressions of Muslimness or perceived Muslimness. Source for Islamophobia, it came to me in a dream.
I believe he thinks I'm a Muslim. I'm going to use that one a lot.
Yeah. Therefore, I'm going to extort money out of him in civil cases and throw him in prison because the government is obsessed with this for some reason.
And
now,
that's the funny thing about perceived Muslimness, because of the fact that it's a a religion that, while associated with, is not directly tied to any particular ethnicity, then yeah, Callum, you could probably claim that, oh, somebody was Islamophobic towards me. I was walking around in my headscarf and my dress, and somebody said they didn't like me. Arrest him, please.
You know what's funny is when we went to the Badman's event, I did a little bit of filming while I was wearing the Islamic garb, and I've never felt so safe because the police were all around, and the police actually did step in to protect me and then take my details and treat me really nicely. It was like, this doesn't usually happen. So yeah, if you need an advantage in life, that works.
Well, if you want a list of criminal statements that you can use against our enemies, Callum, I'll just run down some, because in the Islamic Republic of the UK, these will in fact be grounds for prosecution in the future. So criminal statements include conspiracies about Muslim entryism in politics, government, or other societal institutions. Where would you get that idea from? The myth of Muslim identity having a unique propensity for terrorism, so stats, and claims of a demographic threat posed by Muslims or of a Muslim takeover.
Right, okay, yeah.
So going to Whitechapel, lyrics are more...
Mathematics
Yep.
is illegal.
Well, we have been told it's racist, so...
I love that the US and UK governments publish statistics and then make it a crime to cite those statistics.
Well, they don't cite the statistics anymore, really. I mean, ONS now doesn't publish statistics by race. They also now don't publish statistics for tax contributions by national origin, because when the statistics go against the narrative, just get rid of the stats. Accusing Muslim citizens of being more loyal to the Ummah, or to their countries of origin, or to the alleged priorities of Muslims worldwide than to the interests of their own nations. So the literal Hamas protests. Okay. Denying Muslim populations the right to self-determination by claiming that the existence of an independent Palestine or Kashmir is a terrorist endeavor. Yeah. So to say that Palestine isn't a great country will be a criminal offense. Won't be politicized. And the last one, using the symbols and images associated with classic Islamophobia, e.g. Muhammad being a paedophile. He had a 6-year-old wife who he raped when she was 9.
Yeah, but if you say that, that's crime.
Yeah, you're allowed to read the Quran, but if you read anything, if you read it out loud, then you're in trouble. Come on.
Yep, quite. Claims of Muslims spreading Islam by the sword, which they're called to do.
How did that happen? Why is Islam anywhere? Literally from the earliest days, they were raiding caravans. That's what Muhammad did for the first couple of days.
North Africa didn't used to look the way it does now.
No?
Yep.
No, it didn't, shockingly enough. There was a big injection of a particular admixture somewhere around those conquests. Who knows why?
One of them is also accusing Muslims of subjugating minority groups under their rule. So even the sort of tepid left-wing critique of, look, there are loads of peaceful Muslims.
What happened to all the Christians in the
But
Middle East?
they're not great with Christians and gays and women.
Jews.
That's, see.
Polytheists.
Yeah, well, Callum, you're walking a really... I'm seeing 10 years in prison here.
Let's make it 20.
Yeah, okay. Where you'll be able to read the Quran and study it and realize that you're wrong this whole time. Or to characterize Muslims as sex groomers.
Why would that happen?
Why would that need to be put in the law? Why would people make that possible accusation? Maybe it's because of Rochdale and Rotherham and Telford and Oxford and endless number of cities. Anyway, look, point being, we are extremists currently. We'll probably be criminally liable for being extremists in the future because we have a new state religion, and it's Islam. And I won't be converting anytime soon.
If you appreciated that episode from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content that's on the site, such as the Lads Hours, this one on whether or not cats or dogs are left or right wing. If you'd like to find out what else is being put out, you can follow on Twitter at lotuseaters_com on Twitter. Thank you and goodbye.